Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so good, finally.
I know.
We met a bunch of years ago.
Yes.
And I get Christmas cards and stuff from you, but
like 4 years ago, I guess it was.
I think
was
so.
It?
I think it was. And then, I've just become such a fan of you.
Thanks. Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Why the album now? What was the timing now?
It really just kind of came through me. I'm one of those people. I love creation. I love creativity, and I'm constantly creating, and I'm constantly drawing from life and our life experiences. And the whole album was truly informed by what we all went through together, I think, as a collective over the past 3 years, and still are going through. I think it was timely, and out of every conversation I have, or it can be anything in life. It can be a billboard I see, something will pop out at me and I'll write down all these different titles on my phone. And then I'll take all of those titles and I'll put them on a whiteboard. Yeah, and really? I'll start to see there's usually a through line somehow. In some of the songs I know what I want them to be about, some of them I don't. And God's Work was one of the titles, and it seems like everything I had to write about fell under that umbrella. I mean, everything falls under that umbrella.
Right.
So I was like, that's an interesting title for a record, because it can be so, it can be so polarizing.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah, it can be incredibly polarizing. And even that word for me was incredibly polarizing for my whole life. I was raised Southern Baptist. Mm-hmm. I ran as far away from it as possible. And it was really a reclamation of that word for myself. And I felt like I wanted to, throughout the record, I really kind of look at the duality of life, the human and the holy of things, and how that all plays into our worlds. And I wanted to give people the permission to reclaim that word for themselves. And so I feel like that's kind of what the album does. It's it doesn't want to run away from our humanness. It includes all of it. And I want people to understand that, our humanity can't be left out of our experience. It can't be left out of creation. And so it's a deep record, and it just kind of fell through me. It came through me, and I was like, okay, I'm surrendering to this process.
I love that. It's so funny you say that, because I was preparing. I'm like, do I want to go there right off the top with her? This
I'll go there right off the top.
No, but to your point, I actually think there's a consciousness shift in all different types of faiths regarding that. Had a pastor on my show named Erwin McManus. Do you know who Erwin is?
I know him, yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah, I thought that you would think that, and I thought that you might know him. And he talks often about, in his version of his Christian faith, is the genius of Jesus, and that there's a genius in all of us. And so he very much connects our humanity to God in our experience here. It's not absent of it. And so
exactly.
I was thinking about him, and I was thinking about you when that happened. So let's just go there for a minute. Yeah. What does that word mean to you now? When I say God to you, what does that mean to you?
It does mean creation. I think you can insert the word love. I think it is the essence of who we truly are when you remove all of the mental constructs and the societal programming, the parental programming. I think it's just the core essence of who we are. I think there is a genius in that. And, I feel like we've been told through religion, and I think there's many beautiful things about religion, and there's many things that I've learned through many different teachings. But I feel like when we've been told that our humanity is sinful and it's, unholy. And I know my own experience, I've tried to run away from all those aspects of myself, all the aspects of my shadow. And it's not till I started to turn toward that and accept that and start to bring that into the wholeness of who I am, did I feel actually get to experience, what I believe is God.
Well, if you really want to go really deep, let's do it.
Sure.
But this idea in some faith that, there's the absence of humanity in faith removes sort of this idea of sin. If there's sin, there means there's humans, there's humanity, there's frailties, there's struggles, there's a part of our life that oftentimes people in faith, I think, never face themselves.
Yes.
They never look inward. They're always looking outward. Yeah. And there's something profound about also looking inward. If we didn't need to look inward, there wouldn't be sin. There wouldn't be struggle. There wouldn't be the idea that I need something outside of myself if we don't look at ourselves. So I'm 100% on the road with you here.
And
so
they say sin is really missing the mark, which I love that explanation of sin. And I feel like it's, for me, what I've kind of gathered from that statement. It's missing the mark of that genius that we truly are, missing the mark of that essence of the core of who we are. I think there's so much, like, I've talked about anxiety and depression and so many different things that we all struggle with in some way, shape, or form. And our genius, our core essence can get so clouded. And it's really finding the way back to that inner voice. I mean, I think that's what this record kind of points to is, I feel like until we're about 6 or 7 years old, like we're so in touch with our inner world, our inner voice, our little inner genius, our play,
Oh my gosh.
our innocence. And, there's a song on the record called Innocent. And I started to dig into it for myself of, that thought of that we're always told, that there's a loss of innocence somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back to the apple and Adam and Eve, there's a loss of innocence. And I don't feel like I had this experience. I was doing a lot of somatic work, and I was going through this one session, and I had this like energy that felt like it was hanging outside of me, and it dropped in. And when it dropped into my body, I felt this overwhelming amount of joy. And it lasted for about 48 hours. And I wrote that song Innocent in that time. And I was reading a lot about child sex trafficking at the time too. And it just, something clicked for me, and especially my childhood too of, it's like I didn't really have one. And we've been told we lose our innocence, and I'm like, no, it's there. It's still there. We don't lose it. It just gets clouded. And I feel like, religion is one of those things that, like you were saying, always looking outside of you, never looking in. And we get these things in our head of like loss of innocence, that there's something wrong with us, that we're sinful.
Yep.
And they stick, and it's amazing how much that drives your life. And when for me, when I had that experience of what felt like my purity, my innocence, that still was there, it was like, oh, this hasn't gone anywhere. And I wanted everybody to know, like, this is here.
Yes.
So, and I lose touch with that all the time.
So
I think that's the dance, right?
So do I. Well, by the way, we're going there, aren't we, everybody? We're 5 minutes in. But I want to say something to you. It's amazing how much, I want to unpack some things there. Our work on ourselves lines up, you and I.
It does.
Well, I'll tell you a couple things. One, like all these years I've been, helping with people, their lives and different aspects of personal development or business and stuff. And my work has just moved into this space that all creation, all great things come from love. And I've been talking about this, like my dad getting sober. Why did my dad finally get sober when he quit drinking? Because he loved his family so much. From love, he wanted to try one more time. And this notion of childhood, I write in my book a lot about this thing, why are we happier when we're children? And this genius thing, I think it's somewhat connected to imagination. And so that when we're children, see, there's two ways to operate, I think, in life. One is out of history and memory, and the other one's out of imagination and dreams and genius and creativity. And at some point in most of our lives, yours earlier than most, I lost my childhood because I had to be the man of the house with an alcoholic dad. Right. You lost yours, I think, because of your career, right? But when we're children, we're typically happier because we don't have a history and memory. We're in our imagination. We're in our creativity. We're in our dreams. And at some point, we start to have a history, and we start to operate out of that history and memory. And I think that suppresses our genius. It suppresses our imagination.
Well, and something I've learned about myself is I have a very vivid imagination.
Sure.
I was an only child. I played by myself. Like I talked to, things that weren't there constantly.
Me too.
And when you start to have that history and those traumas meld with a really intense imagination, like I make up so much that's not there. And I've had to learn, like, oh, that's, I've had to learn to utilize my imagination for something better, or else if it's like idle hands or devil's handiwork kind of thing. It's like, if it's just sitting there not doing anything productive and guiding it in the right direction, it will just totally go over and take all my traumas, and it'll make up all the things, it'll bring it all into the now. So I've had to really learn how to direct that. And I think that's why music for me and writing is such an outlet, because it allows me to direct that wild imagination into something powerful.
I'm the same way. I did it last night. No, I did. Last night I woke up at like 2:30, and I just started stacking anxieties and worries and things I've got to do and stuff that's not going right. And I'm stacking it. And I finally went, you're doing it again.
Yeah.
I literally, in the middle of my almost halfway asleep, I go, you're doing it again. Can you not at least sleep through this? So it creeps back on me too. Do you?
Oh God, I understand so deeply. Yeah. I mean, my sleep is not great. And my Aura Ring yells at me all the time.
My Aura Ring was yelling at me. I posted it this morning.
Yeah.
Here's my Aura Ring. Look how many times I'm up. And this one's for an hour.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, you
just
dumbass.
ruminating.
You're just doing it over and over.
That's
Half
where
of it's not even
compassion
true.
comes in. We're not going to call ourselves a dumbass.
Right,
We're going to call it.
Let me love myself.
I love you. It's okay. No, but it's so easy. And then you get into that trap of doing exactly that, going, oh, you're doing it again. This is so stupid. And then you go into judgment. And then it's just like, okay, well, now I'm judging myself. And then it becomes this circular thing.
For me, what is good, and I know you've had this too, when I have an awareness over something, it kind of loses its power over me. So rather than calling it, I'm kind of being funny. I'm like, are doing it again, dude. And it's almost become, because I have done work on myself, which we'll talk about with you in a second. It almost does become like, come on, man. You're doing it. Aren't you tired of doing this? You're doing it again.
It's a habit.
It's a habit. It's history and memory.
It is. And
it's a memory.
It's the addiction of, I know I'm addicted to anxiety. It's for me, I have kind of two speeds. I have anxiety and I go into freeze mode. And that was a protective mechanism for me. When I needed rest and I couldn't say no as a kid, I went into freeze. And so my anxiety for performance has always been the mechanism that has driven me out of freeze in order to work. And so I've had these two modes that it still happens all the time.
Really?
But my awareness of it, like you're saying, the awareness of it is oh, this is what's happening. I don't have to beat myself up about it. It's just my nervous system doing what it's trained to do.
Yep.
And we can figure out a way out of this.
Right.
But it's the awareness of it is what's key.
Our addiction to anxiety we share. I wonder if we'd be really good for each other when we point it out, or if we would just constantly pour it on there. You think you're worried? I'm really worried. We just,
Exactly.
I wonder if we would be good for one another, because I do it too. I think we become addicted to the familiar, even if it doesn't serve us, right? We love the familiar. And I used to brag that, man, I am great under stress. I would brag about it. Man, you should see how great I am under stress. And then what I would do is create stress so that I thought I could be great. I would create the familiar. And if I woke up one day, I'm like, so is this what I want to do the rest of my life, is somehow be great under stress all the time? So I don't want to do that. So let me ask you a question. When I hear you sing, I don't mean to float your boat, but I don't know if you ever heard this before, but you're really good at it.
Thanks. I was thinking about trying it, maybe as a job.
But talking about God, I was like, why do I sometimes cry when I hear her sing?
Oh yeah.
And I think it's maybe there's the presence of God there.
Yeah.
Do you believe that?
Yeah.
How much of what you have is given to you through a gift, and how much of it is that you've worked at it?
I think it's, I think I came in with it. I mean, my dad has tapes of me singing at 18 months old, full on, could carry a tune, hear pitch. There's something, I did come in this world with it. And then I definitely have worked at it, and I've worked at it more in the last couple of years. I've been on the road my whole life, and with COVID, I didn't sing really for 2 years. I made the record, but that was here and there. And I was constantly in quote unquote practice,
Yeah.
And so I've actually worked at retraining my muscle to build it back up so I can go work again on a consistent basis. So this is the first time in my life that I've really had to ever work at it. But yeah, it's, the vocal cords are these tiny muscles, and it's like anything else in the body. They can hold inflammation, they can get tired, it's kind of crazy that the thing there is in my body. Yeah. And I have to remember everything else I do in my life affects that thing.
I would challenge everybody that they're going to go get your album, right? Go make sure that you go get God's work. And if you can get through that whole album without crying or getting emotional, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, you need to go see a therapist.
You literally immediately need to go see a therapist, because it's moving.
Yeah, it's meant to be. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like part of my gift is, as I've gotten older, what I've realized is to help people feel. And I know it's part of my gift to myself too. Music was always an outlet to be able to express the things that were scary to express.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's when I make an album, that's part of what I'm doing too, is helping people express things. And, on this record, we go into we go into grief and rage and, and loneliness and love and hope. And like, we run the gamut. And, I feel like there is something that kind of opens up when I sing and I connect to something else.
You must.
Yeah, I do.
I think when I'm experiencing great art, even like a great speech, if I hear someone give a speech, but particularly like with your work, I find myself almost leaving the music from sometimes and like reflecting on my own life. Like I leave what you're actually saying for a few minutes, but the way you're saying it, the energy that comes from it, what I'm feeling causes me to think about things that seem not correlated, but are. And I can only explain that that's a spiritual experience when that happens. I just want you to know you do that for me.
Thank you.
So we said that if you like, don't cry when you listen to the album, you should probably go to therapy. And I want to talk to you about that. Because I talk openly about like different struggles I've had with, mental health or anxiety or worry. And I think it takes courage for anybody to do that. I think it takes extra courage when you're a public person like I am. And then I think it takes extra courage when you're a public person like you are. So I have to imagine, was it like was there a catalyst where you went, because you actually went somewhere for a while and said, I'm just going to unplug.
Yeah.
Right. So I heard you say something like you felt like you were permanently plugged in all the time.
Oh, I still do sometimes.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I have this electrical current that runs through my body, which is maybe partly, I mean, if you want to look at the spiritual aspect of it, maybe it's partly like my connection with all that is that's coming through me. But I do feel like also with my nervous system and the way that I was on, I say it's been on stun since I was a child.
Yeah.
I mean, just growing up in the household I grew up in, there was a lot of arguing, and when you're constantly in that hypervigilant mode, and then taking that already hypervigilant child and putting her into a world where all eyes are on her 24/7. My hypervigilance has been intense, but it's it's interesting. I at 30, I just decided I needed to go get help. I was having horrible anxiety, insomnia, like depression, and I'd never been alone. There's always been someone with me. And when I went into this treatment center, like when the doors locked, like I remember going, oh my God, like I'm alone for the first time.
Really?
Yeah. And it was...
Did they take your phone from you too?
I don't remember if they did, maybe for a moment, maybe for the first few days. And what no one knows, actually, during this time, I was going through like all these dental surgeries. And while I was in there, I had 5 root canals.
Oh my God.
5 at one time.
Come on.
And while I was in treatment, and they're looking at me, first off, they thought I was like, they thought I was wanting drugs at the beginning of it. They were like, oh yeah, she's just doing this. And then they took me had to have a root canal at midnight one night. My dentist met me. He's like, yeah, we need to do 5. I'm like, see,
oh my gosh.
I wasn't asking for drugs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was like, it was just a moment in my life where everything was just falling apart. And it was the greatest gift, to be honest. I mean, we can never see those at that moment in time. But, and from that moment on, I think, I just turned 40, and I feel like these last 10 years have been my own journey of kind of peeling back every layer, and I still have so many layers to peel back.
I love that part.
But I have more, I think now I have more of an understanding of all the little pieces that are how they all fit into this puzzle of me.
You think you know you better than
I do. I know me very well. Sometimes so much, that awareness piece where you're like, I'm aware of this, but I can't do anything about it just yet.
Yes, I do know.
Yeah.
What I love about what you're saying is that I sometimes have conversations with friends of mine where like that one moment changed everything, and I was never that way again. No. And I've had a few things in my life like that, but I find that most aren't. Most are like, I made progress there.
Yeah, totally.
I made progress there. I chipped away at something there. And I think that's a really important thing for you to share, if you don't mind, is that you still have these proclivities from time to time, right? I think there are people like, I've gotten better, but I'm not all the way better. And then
is there an all the way better though?
I don't think there is.
I don't know if there is.
I don't think there is.
And I think we get, a lot of this kind of self-help world can also be just another way to shame ourselves.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And
exactly.
So for me, I've really had to notice that also.
Yeah.
It's like, how am I using this self-help world to run away from the core of everything? And also, how am I using this to stay in a shame cycle where I feel like I'm constantly trying to get better and get better and get better. And it's like, okay, when do I just
exist,
allow?
just be,
Yeah.
allow. I'm wow. I hope everyone's enjoying this as much as me, because I'm right with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even shame myself, like, who are you to be giving people all this advice?
Oh, yeah.
And you were up at 2:30 last night.
I did the same thing this morning, by the way. I
Did
knew I
you?
was coming and talk to you. I've had a rough morning, and I was like, you get this imposter syndrome.
Or fraudulent.
Yeah, you're completely fraudulent.
Yeah.
And I stopped myself and I was like, no, you're not. You've come a long way, and you have a lot to share from the place that you are right now.
Yes.
And then, I have a lot to grow, but it's not, I think my growth is just, I think you get to a point where, for me at least, I want to be better for myself. It's not about anything outside of me.
Yep.
It's like, I want to treat myself kinder, and I want to live a happier, more joyful life. And it's for me. And I think there's a big difference in that when that starts to shift. It's
So
a really big change.
It's so true for everyone. Listen to this. There's too many times in my life where I'm making a change and I'm going, now this is going to be a good lesson for everybody else.
Right. Yeah.
It is helping me.
Yeah.
But instead of just being in it and like, I'm just going to treat myself kinder right now. And if at some point what I'm going through would help some other people, I'll do it. But I think we also get into this thing of, because we have good hearts, we want to help people all the time. Sometimes the most important thing you can do to help everybody else is to care for you.
Yeah.
To help yourself,
Absolutely.
right? So you go away and you come back, and I'm just curious, does the anxiety manifest itself in any area? Could even be like coming here today, or
it does.
It does. So you'll still, and what does it look like for you? I don't really want to do this, or I'm not good enough to do this, or how do I get out of doing this, or
Oh no, I mean, I definitely, it could manifest in all those ways,
right?
actually.
Yeah, me too. That's why I ask.
I think it's definitely kind of comes back to this worthiness wound.
Wow, it's amazing.
I know it is pretty crazy if you think about it, because of all that I've accomplished in my life, but I do think that that's why I was so adamant about accomplishing so much, because I felt like I had to in order to receive love.
Me too.
And when you really boil it down, especially for myself, ultimately at the end of the day. And so now I feel like that's definitely quieted down a lot. And like I said, I can stop myself this morning and be like, no, you're it's all okay. You can have all the anxiety and all these feelings of unworthiness, and you can still show up, and you're still going to, for me, it's I just ask, I trust that whatever needs to come through will come through me. And
it is.
And thanks. And that's the thing. For me, I've learned to kind of move that piece of me just to the side, not out of the way completely, just move it to the side. Tell it can be there. You can have your space in me today. You can be right here, and I'm also with you. There's another part of me that's here too. So it's a bit of compartmentalizing, and at the same time allowing it to be complete. I for me in the past, I used to never have stage fright, never have anxiety. When I was a kid, I felt superhuman. Once I started to see my humanity, it changed everything. All of a sudden I had anxiety. All of a sudden I had stage fright at times. I realized.
About when was that?
My humanity. It started, I would say maybe around 28. Yeah, 27, 28.
Me too. For me, it was when other people started to criticize me a little bit.
Completely.
Yeah.
That's exactly when it happened. My husband and I have been married for 12 years, but we went through, very public affair. And the press is just brutal. And especially for a woman, and especially for a young woman who they built up to be America's sweetheart forever.
Yeah.
And so it was the ultimate story for them. And that's when I started judging myself through other people's eyes. And one day that did switch, and maybe 32 or 33, I realized, wait, these are people's projections onto me. I don't have, that's not who I am. My mistakes, I'm not my mistakes, and I'm not who they say I am. And I think that it took me doing a lot of soul searching to recognize who I was in order for that not to be projected upon me.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Same with me.
Yeah. It's intense. It's an intense roller coaster.
Yeah. And by the way, this projection from other people manifests in your life listening to this maybe the same way it does for Leanne and I, but maybe differently. Maybe you're living someone's projection in your life.
Yeah.
Your parents projected a particular career on you.
Totally.
Or beliefs in yourself, or what you are or are not good at.
Mm-hmm.
They projected that onto you, and you've adapted it, and that's how you live your life.
Yep.
And so a lot of our lives, there's this whole thing, are we living in some ulterior dimension? You know, we're not, but we are oftentimes just living other people's projections.
Mm-hmm.
And for me and you, it was like, wow, we were sort of achievers, and then criticism. And then I started to sort of look at myself as if maybe I've been fooling myself the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe
I am that horrible person they
right,
say
maybe I am. And maybe part of those,
maybe some of it was true.
Maybe some of it was true for me too.
Some of it, I was like, oh, I can see where I was kind of an asshole at that moment in time. You know, like, oh, I didn't take other people's feelings into consideration when I did blank, whatever it may have been. I can look back now and go, oh yeah, like there were parts of that were true, but that's not who I am.
Me too.
Yeah.
My way out, I'm curious what some of your ways are. Let's talk about some tools out for you. Yes. What works for you?
Ice baths. No, I'm just kidding. We were just talking about how much we can't stand ice baths before the show.
Yeah, it's definitely not ice baths for the two of us right now. That's so dang funny. It's so true. For me, the hardest thing, I'll tell you something interesting, because I've been in front of people. I conflated two things too. I conflated like love with significance. Mm-hmm. When I did significant things, I felt loved. Mm-hmm. So if I would just keep doing significant things, and sometimes in life, these things also work for you. Like one of the reasons you were so successful is because you did make this. And then oftentimes in life, if something works for you a little bit, it's really scary to give it up entirely, because you're like, that's part of my recipe. If I don't have anxiety or worry, maybe I won't practice as good, or I won't be on my A game. And so there's a nuance to life. Mm-hmm. That's the hard part about podcasting or writing a book. It's like there's a nuance to something. But for me, the hardest thing that is now the most beautiful thing is what you just said earlier, me being alone with me. Mm-hmm. I realized, like, maybe it's different for a woman, but maybe it's not. But like for me, like I never even just stopped and really just like looked at me in a mirror. Like just not, I'd look at like, is my hair messed up or something? Right. But I mean, just like, I love this man. Mm-hmm. I had never done that. Like, I love this man. This is a good man. I never would stop. I was just doing life. Mm-hmm. And then this idea of like getting alone with myself and being quiet and like just being with my breathing, and these were so difficult for me. And when they were difficult for me, I thought, well, maybe that's because it would be so valuable for me if I could do it. And so for me, forms of meditation have helped me a lot. Mm-hmm. Sometimes like actually writing for me can be a form of meditation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So what's worked for you? Like if you were to share with someone who says, I got anxiety, I got worry, I got fear, I got anger, what has actually worked most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that piece of creativity is super important. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're all creative beings. Like that is our nature. Yep. And I think until we nurture that nature, and find a way of doing that. Like, and I think what's so interesting too is we are all so unique. Like what works for one person will not work for the next person possibly. And, you know, it's just, you have to find your own path with it. So I dip in and out of things all the time. Meditation is pretty much a non-negotiable for me, even if it's 5 minutes during the day. I just need to sit, breathe, and, you know, I'll take in an inhale and do it like double time that. Double longer exhale. That usually will help my anxiety a little bit. But But yeah, I mean, I've really gotten into recently working a lot with my physical body, like balancing my hormones. Like I kind of went from the beginning meditation and breathing to now like running the gamut of pretty much everything you can think of.
Me too.
But physical, mental, spiritual, like emotional, it's all important. You can't leave one out. You really can't. Writing, I think, has been such a big thing for me also, creating. And it's interesting that you just said, because something clicked for me, is you said that, we get projected upon like the things we're good at, things we're not good at. I think leaning into the things I've been told I wasn't good at, like I don't like to dance. Like it really, I do not like to move my body. And I think that also has to do with old religious programming too. But I had this whole thing around, someone told me one time that I was a better singer than I was a dancer, and I stopped dancing. And which, by the way, like I might have been a fine dancer, but if you're going to tell me I'm a better singer, I mean, I'm. I was exceptionally good at singing, so I couldn't dance that well too. But yeah, I felt like I just stopped doing it. And so for me, finding what those places are that feel really uncomfortable, and even if it's for me putting one song on and like moving my body freely and when I do that, I'll bawl. Like I'll bawl and I'll have so much joy at the same time. And then I'll stop. I'm like, okay, if that's kind of my threshold of how I lean into those things. But I feel like it's finding those places for people that are scary and walking into them. And you don't have to just, run and jump off the cliff. Like just dipping a toe into things to expand who we believe ourselves to be. Like it opens our lives up in every other aspect, not just that one little space, but in every other aspect of our life starts to change.
You're so right. That's where I want to go too. You're like doing the interview for me. But like I tied up my identity into everything outside of me all of my life. So like if I made money or I got a muscle or whatever it was my identity was always tied to the external. Man, it worked for me for a long time.
Yeah, it does. It works.
It works. But it like, when I got wealthy or whatever, like it never was quite what I thought it would be when I would get there. And I think it was because I had tied it to the external instead of like I just love this work. I love doing this work. So you had to have had your identity completely tied up in being famous or being a singer. And have you unpacked that at all? Like someone listening to this, your identity could be that, and